I think I'm gonna try this. Is this working? Is that better?
Did you turn on?
Well, oh, yeah.
You turn on. Here.
Do I have to hold it?
Hold it, I think.
Thank you. Catherine again saves the day. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm really happy to see so many of you here, especially with it being so cold outside. To make the trek here is nice. My name is Megan, and I'm a parent here in the district. I have 2 kids. My daughter walks to Edison Elementary. I live in Ridge Acres, and my son walks to Willoughby Middle. And like a lot of you, I was really worried when the levy failed in November, because I know what that can mean for our community and for our schools. But I also knew at that time that I didn't really understand a lot of the issues facing the district, especially when it comes to financing and the funding and how the state was allocating funds to the district. So I decided to get involved with the levy committee and attended a couple meetings, and then I decided that I needed to make an appointment with Bill and learn more, and he sat with me and Chrissy for an hour and took us through a course, and I learned a lot in that. But then I also thought that if I had questions about funding and what was going on, that other parents might have questions as well. So I offered to put together a presentation to try to explain some of those questions. And we're going to cover a couple of those things tonight, just a few. And then this presentation will be available up on the website for you all to go through on your own later tonight in your spare time, all day tomorrow. You know, how much extra time you have to spend learning about school finance would be good. So I'm going to go and show you the cover page of the presentation. So this is what it looks like. There's a lot of zooming in and out and animation. All of the bubbles that you see here have more content behind them, so you can click around and learn more. There's not really a set order, but you can click around and do whatever you want to learn. And what I'm going to do tonight to start off is just cover a couple of issues around funding that's facing the district right now. So I'm clicking this bubble here. And you can see here that there are really 3 big issues that are causing trouble for the district right now in terms of funding. There are renewal levies, which I'll talk a little bit more about. There's the TPP phase out, and then there's the fact that we are a capped district. So the thing about renewal levies is that we are one of only 2 districts, I believe, in the entire state that primarily relies on renewal levies for our funding. And do you guys know, what does it mean when it's a renewal levy? It has an end date. Yeah, it expires. It's going to end. So every time the renewal expires, it has to be put up on the ballot again every 5 years, every couple years. And the thing about that is that it's not a steady and reliable source of funding for the district. Most other districts in the state have a better mix of renewal and continuing levies, which is why they're not always on the ballot the way that we seem to be. The other issue that's facing the district right now is the phase out of TPP funding. And this is another thing that's hitting our district particularly hard because we have a very strong business base here, and the TPP tax is based on businesses. So the state originally was giving about 2 decades or 20 years for districts to adjust to the phase out and the reduction in that funding, but then they suddenly cut it from 2 decades to only several years. So that means that all of a sudden the district has to make up for many millions of dollars in its budget now. And suddenly, like all of a sudden, this has to be made up for. And then the third issue that's facing the district is the fact that we are a capped district. And this is the one that gets me really, really mad for some reason. Because when I dug into the numbers behind this one, what I saw is that the state is cutting funding to programs that impact my kids. And I had no idea. I had no idea that that was happening at all. So what's happened is that the state has decided that the growth that our district can have is capped at 3%. And it doesn't matter what other types of funding issues our district is facing. It doesn't matter if our enrollment increases, 3% is it. And if you dig into this presentation later tonight, which I'm sure you're all going to do, what you'll see is that even this year, our district is not receiving the amount of money it should be receiving from the state based on the state's own funding formula right now. So those are 3 really big things that are happening at once and affecting the district. And in summary, what that means is that the district has lost about 18% of its yearly revenue, which is a lot. I mean, 18% is a lot. Imagine if your employer came to you and told you that you were going to have an 18% pay cut. Like, what would you do? What would you cut first? You know, you would probably cancel your vacation. You'd probably think about eating out less. You might even start to think about the cost of your groceries and the cost of your home. And these are the types of things that the district has to think about now. It really only has two choices to make up for these funding losses. It can either cut services and programs, or it can put a levy on the ballot. That's it. That's all that it can do. And I want to say too that in the last couple of weeks as I've been learning this, I've met with a lot of people in the district and a lot of people on the levy committee, and these are great people. These are hardworking people. I'm going to take a little second. In my job, in my 9-to-5 job, I work with a lot of different businesses, so I get to see the operations. And a lot of businesses, when you go into them, they are not open to sharing their budget spreadsheets with you. They're not going to send it to you. They're not going to sit down with you for hours and try to explain what's going on. But here at the district, that's what they do. There's a lot of hardworking people here who are doing everything that they can to fix what's going on. And I really, really hope that we can all work together to fix this for our kids, too. So I think that's all I have. So next Crystal is going to come, and she's going to go through a little bit more in this presentation and talk about, introduce herself and her experience, and then also talk about the cost of the levy to you.
Thank you, Megan. Can you guys hear me okay without the microphone? Yes? All right, because I'm a microphone eater, so I don't want to be like, yeah, so forgive me. If I start to be quiet, which is highly unlikely, let me know and I'll pick it up. My name is Crystal. I've got a child in the middle school in the district, and she's a sports child. She's a drama girl. She's in all sorts of activities, and if I get choked up sounding a little bit, it's because we're losing that, and we need that.
I can use a microphone. Is that good? Oh, darn it. I figured I had a big enough mouth. I want to talk to you, just so I don't completely lose it. I want to talk to you about what this is going to cost, because that is so important to me. I'm on a single income. No, I'm on a fixed income. My husband's the only paycheck earner in the house. So really important to me is what the levy's going to cost me. Honestly, I would sell my soul if I could, because it's that important to me to have my child and the kids in the district be involved in something. You know, idle hands, you don't want that. So what the district has done, what we have done on the website, you can go and find out what your home's appraised value is. Goes right to the Lake County Auditor's Office, gives your appraised values. You can go into the next bubble down, your levy cost. So easy. We have an example of $100,000 for our home value, and the 4.94 mil, that's what your cost is per year, $172.90. So divide that by 12, that's your, it's minimum. It's like the cost of a stamp on average. Okay, so it's not that much money. And what that's going to do, we get to keep our sports, we get to keep our choir concerts, our band concerts, our music programs, our extracurriculars, the summer programs like summer school, the summer learning program, which is so important to so many people that I know personally. And that's all going to be covered by the levy. Without the levy passing in March, we lose all that. And it terrifies me, because what am I going to do with a child in the district who doesn't have access to these really important programs? So that's why this is so important. Go on to weschools.org, support weschools.org, pardon me, and do this for yourself and find out what it's going to cost. It's not that much, and this is a really imperative levy. We need this. So I thank everybody for coming in tonight. I'm sorry. And I think that's all I had to cover. Am I about right? Yes.
I don't think we did this last time. Did we show how to get, so is everybody aware where this slide deck is going to be? Support We Schools, and then how to get through it. So on the site, we're going to have the presentation. You can click on it. It's not a normal PowerPoint presentation where you go click, click, click.
No.
So when you click on one of those bubbles, it'll highlight or draw that in.
This is huge.
Okay, so then if you want to go back, or if you go into more of the bubbles, so you can keep drilling in, and then if you want to go back, what you have to do is hit this back button. So I don't know if it was totally intuitive. If you've not used this type of presentation, it may take a minute. I don't want people to get lost and frustrated. But this will be on the website, Support We Schools. You can dig into all this information that has been at these meetings, but also we want to make sure it's in a kind of a palatable fashion for you all. Thank you.
Because I just inherit, I just do it, because, all
Well, yeah, we've been running through this a bunch of times. It's kind of second nature to us now.
right. So on that note, I think I'm going to introduce our next Kathy. Is that,
You want to
oh,
talk about one?
you do?
You will?
Can you explain the-
Oh, sure. I'm also, usually don't need a microphone, but I'll do the honors. So at this point in time, what we would like to do is be able to have the panel come up onto the stage, I'm not going to get in front of that, and answer your questions. So we're going to open up the panel of experts. There's some mothers or some parents. There will be some of the board and also the superintendent and the treasurer. So what we welcome you is to ask us or them questions. I'll come around with the microphone so we can hear your question. And so that way we can get your answers to what you might have, make sure that you leave this room more informed than you came in, understanding the topic a little bit better. That is our desire for you tonight, is to leave an informed individual. Our desire really is for you not just to leave informed, but energized and possibly even motivated to get your neighbors, other people, talk to them. Talk to the people at the store. Talk to the people around you. We weren't that many shy. This really needs to pass, but I'll let them take that away. So we have the panel up here. We'd open the floor for questions. So please, whatever questions you might have, now's the time to ask them.
Like,
Please, oh, you need the microphone. This was a little different than yesterday.
yesterday, when we do our questions tonight, Mike, do you want to introduce each of us like you did last night?
Yeah.
That'd be great. Oh, yeah. So people can-
For those who aren't familiar with any of these individuals, we have some excellent panel guests tonight. We have Crystal Pearson, who's a parent who spoke to you earlier. We have Christy Kaluta.
Clodagh.
I knew I was going to mess that one up. Clodagh. Christy has been an amazing individual on our fundraising committee, pulling a lot of stuff together. She's been a workhorse behind the scenes for us all. We have Steve Thompson. Steve Thompson is our superintendent. You probably know. Steve's been wonderful coming to all these meetings, giving us all kinds of information, working with us to help all of you understand, to help you all be more informed voters. Tom Beal is the president of the school board. Wonderful, wonderful person, but you'll get to know him more. Also, Megan Cox, a parent. She did the presentation. She put the presentation together, that slide deck that you saw, if you will. We also have Bill Parkinson. So Bill is our treasurer. So these are your panel of experts, parents, and also the other individuals on the board and such, who are able to help you understand a little bit more about what we're going on here.
Mike, can you introduce our two board members that are also?
Oh yeah, I did forget that last time. You're absolutely right.
No, Brian Jones.
So I just have people tell them, which is fine. Amy Zern, also on the school board. And I'm sorry, I haven't got the list. Brian Jones, also on the school board as well. So we have, if I'm not mistaken, the entire school board.
Had an arrangement.
Okay, so we have all but one of the school board, plus the superintendent. Plus we have principals. Do we have any mayors tonight?
Not seeing any-
We had mayors last night. We had people of the community. We have past board individuals as well. So these are the experts that are going to be able to answer your questions and get you out of the door excited about voting, excited about talking to your community. Did I miss anybody?
So we'll repeat the question.
Yes. So what I was going to do is help kind of just manage, in case there's a lot of questions at once. We'll call you all out. We'll direct the question. Because I have a really loud voice, will be able to make sure that they hear. They'll repeat the question, and they'll answer your question. We are videotaping it, just so you know, for Facebook Live, or it's a Facebook event, so just so you know. So what are your questions? Help us. What would you like to know?
We have someone.
Yes, Colleen.
So my question is, I've been to all the meetings that you guys had up until the beginning of December, but this is the first time I've heard that we're a cap district. Can you explain a little bit about what that means, and then why we're a cap district, and what do we do to change that? Thank you.
Sure. The question was why we're a cap district and what is being a cap district mean? basically, being a cap district means exactly as Megan has had indicated previously. The state of Ohio does not want to fully fund the state funding formula. So they arbitrarily put a 3% cap on growth. The reason we are capped is the way the funding formula works for us in terms of enrollment, in terms of valuation, in terms of residential income wealth and residential property wealth. You mix all those things together, and the funding formula says that we should be capped. We should be receiving $4 million more a year in funding, but because of this arbitrary 3% cap, we can only grow at 3%. Now, the one caveat to that is House Bill 166. That is the current state budget bill that was signed into law by Governor DeWine over the summer. House Bill 166 keeps our funding exactly flat. We won't see $1 less, and we will not see $1 more for this year and next year for the funding formula. So we lose out on millions of dollars in funding as a result.
Did you say how that could be changed, or it can be changed? The cash.
I'm sorry, can it be changed?
Yeah.
Um,
It's like, if you showed growth, then you would think it would be able to be changed at some point.
It would take an act of the General Assembly to change that. We are one of 109 districts out of approximately 600. There's a little over 600, but about 109 out of 600 that are capped. The funding formula is set into place. House Bill 166 did not change the funding formula, and any changes to that formula would, like I said, take an act of the General Assembly and a signature of Governor DeWine.
So I started, after the levy failed in November, I started a Facebook group called Ohioans for Improved School Funding. And the reason I did that is because I knew back when I was in college that the state of Ohio's way that they fund schools was found unconstitutional. It's actually been found unconstitutional a couple of times, and they're basically still doing the same thing. And it's leaving local districts like ours in, these dire situations. And so I started this Facebook group. You can search for Ohioans for Improved School Funding and join the group if you'd like. And I have pinned right to the top of the group the contact information for state senators, state representatives, our governor, the Ohio State Superintendent. So if you want an easy way to find how to contact them, you can do that in the group. If you're not on Facebook, find me afterwards, give me your email. We can communicate and I can share that with you. It just saves you the legwork of looking up your own representatives and senators. And I actually have it broken down based on what city you live in, who is your representative. And so their contact information is there. And also we had another parent who's a lawyer and really good with words write a sample letter that you can personalize and send to people at the state level, emailed to them so that they, can hear your concerns. And, I think that's one of the first things we can all do from home to try to make some change. And we're also working on some other ways that we can affect some change at the state level.
Yes, go ahead.
Chrissy, is there a chance that you could take that letter and pop it on there?
In the Prezi or in the supportweschools.org?
In the support we school.
Yeah.
.org that people can go to who don't have Facebook? Who aren't able
Absolutely,
to,
that's actually a great idea, thank you.
but they want to write, want to go ahead and write?
Absolutely,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
So we'll put supportweschools.org is the website that you'll hear us refer to over and over again. Upcoming events are on there, information, frequently asked questions, information about, why we're in the position we're in. This presentation will be there when it's ready to go. I think it's ready now, right, Megan? So Laura Kramer has done an awesome job of taking the website and making it more user-friendly. And so I will let her know to go ahead and put that letter on there and the contact information. So we'll probably make a tab for reaching out to people at the state level. Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
If a person is, got homestead exemption or credit, would that make the amount a little bit less?
Can you repeat the question, Bill?
Yes, the question is, if somebody had the homestead credit, would that make the $172.90 lower? The answer is yes. The Lake County Auditor's Office, their webpage has a tab for the exemption application, and people can go to that website, fill out the application, and get that credit applied to their property taxes. I don't know the deadlines off the top of my head, but there are deadlines that the auditor puts forth in order to get those applications in place.
What would be a criteria for that?
There's income criteria, there's disability criteria, so there are a couple of those criteria that will kick in to allow or disallow a person the credit on their property taxes.
Can we link that?
Anybody else? Next question, please.
I'm sorry, you had said before there's over 600 school districts, but only 109 are capped. Why is the 109 capped? I mean, what makes us special?
The question is why are we one of 109 school districts that are capped and the other districts are not capped? It is a function of the funding formula. The funding formula is fairly complex. It takes into consideration federal adjusted gross income of the residents of the school district. It takes into consideration what the state refers to as property wealth, puts that into the formula. It takes into consideration enrollment. It takes into consideration agricultural values, residential values. It puts that in there. I don't have my laptop in front of me. I'd be able to explain it more with you. If you want to send me an email, I can share with you the formula. But there are other districts in the state that are farming communities. The funding formula is written in such a way that it also benefits farming communities, not just urban school or suburban schools. There are many different types of school districts. There's urban, suburban, farming communities, rural. For example, down Southeast Ohio, their funding formula is that they're primarily funded by the state versus the local property tax owner. So it just depends on where the school district is located and what type of community supports the school
So
district.
it's nothing we did wrong or anything
No,
that we
no.
could have, we didn't do something to make this happen. It kind of just was bestowed upon us.
No, absolutely not. We did nothing incorrect, nothing wrong. It's just the circumstances of the Willoughby East Lake community. The various, like I said, the income, the property, and all those variables that feed into the funding formula, then say via math, were capped.
How often is that reevaluated? Clearly, I mean, I guess where I'm going with this is obviously, you know, we're lucky enough, we're the benefit of being, you know, good income, average income, good property values, but obviously the community not supporting this could have a negative impact of those values going forward. And then, so how often are those things reevaluated, and you know, when could that cap be lifted potentially if you had a significant drop?
The state reevaluates the formula once a year, meaning they'll put in the federal adjusted gross income once a year. They'll drop in the values that they receive from the county auditor's office through the Department of Taxation once a year. They look at enrollment once a year. They may do a couple of adjustments, but primarily it's one time a year where they look at the major components of the funding formula, and then after that, it's let it go.
The next 2 years, you're pretty much locked in, or is it locked for the following?
It's locked in for 1 year, and then they reevaluate, and then you're locked in again. Unless, like I said, the General Assembly intervenes and changes something. But unless that happens, the funding formula that's in place is going to be in place at least through the 5-year forecast, which is what's in that document. I don't see the funding formula changing anytime soon.
We have a question in the back?
I'm a parent in the district, and I've been to the meetings, and one of the meetings I actually learned in the levy committee is that we have a number of people in the community, unfortunately not registered to vote, including parents. I've been making calls, but I was wondering if you could kind of explain that in a little more detail, because it was news to me, and in case anyone wants to get involved and help support the cause.
Restate the question, please.
So I think the question is, you were surprised to hear the number or percentage of parents that are not registered, is that correct? And then what can we do to help? Is that correct? Am I summarizing that correctly? I'll just give the information, then I'll pass it off to Chrissy. I was surprised as well to learn that about half of our parents are not registered. And then of those parents that are registered, a little less than half actually voted in November. So that means that approximately 25% of our parents weighed in on a pretty important levy, which was in November. So that's the primary reason that we failed to levy, in terms of just looking at it from a data perspective. So this levy committee is working diligently to address that issue, and I'm going to turn it over to Chrissy to give you more information about that.
So your second part was, what can we do about that? So the levy committee, I guess it was early December, we met and we formed groups that are focused on different things that, tasks that need accomplished to get this March levy passed. We also just had a presentation from a gentleman from Columbus whose full-time job is to work with school districts and help them pass levies. So he came last week, and what I was really pleased to see from this expert was the things he was listing that need done are all the things that we've been working on for over a month. So we are doing the right things. We need more help. The more people we have, the more people we can reach. But just a few examples, we have a get out the vote community, or get out into the community to reach out to people group. So we're doing things like, as far as parents go, going to events at our schools. We have a table set up. We have computers or iPads where people can stop there and they can register to vote. They can also register to get an absentee ballot. The voting day for this March levy is March 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day and is a holiday for a lot of people that they celebrate all day long. And so we're trying to get as many people to do absentee ballots as possible. So one of the ways we'll reach some of the parents is through these events, and we're doing them across the district at all different buildings. We're also, I know we're going to, as far as getting into the community more, senior centers, YMCA, and we're trying to get into some churches so that we can share information, get people registered to vote. We also have a group on the phones. Coffee Talks, yes. So the phones, we need more volunteers for this as well. It's really simple. Mike Clements, if you can give your information to me or Mike Monreal or Catherine Beal, and we can get you in touch with Mike Clements. I don't think he's here tonight. So what he has is he has a script, and we're asking for people to make phone calls. You call 20 people. He'll give you a list of 20 people, and just ask them if they're registered to vote and point them to the Lake County election website so that they can get registered to vote. It takes a few minutes. So that's another thing that we're doing. And in case anyone's concerned with their phone number being out there, Google Voice is an app that will scramble. Basically, it gives you a different phone number. So nobody will have your personal cell phone number when you call them. You call through the Google Voice app. It's free. And it also assigns you a phone number so they can call you back if they need to. But that kind of protects your personal information that way. And then, what was the last thing?
The Coffee Talks.
The Coffee Talks, thank you.
If you want to post.
Yeah, in Coffee Talks, this will reach parents and just residents in the community in general. This worked really well when we had our campaign for the bond issue in 2015. So what that is you can sign up, and you can do this on supportweschools.org. You can sign up to do a little group chat in your living room. It's really simple. You invite some neighbors or some other parents that you might, your kids' friends' parents. You invite a group of people over, and then somebody from either Mr. Thompson or Mr. Parkinson, or even myself. We have some people, I think Megan would do them too. Dr. Beal would probably go if you wanted a board member. But we'll come and just chat with those people. It's not a formal presentation. It's more of, we sit down and say, okay, what do you want to know about? What are your questions? And so we're hitting the topics and the things that are really important to those people. So that's something you can go to supportweschools.org and sign up to host one of those. It was really, really effective when we did it for the bond issue.
Just add on to that.
Sure.
So yesterday we had an event at North, roughly similar turnout. I don't know about you, I think there's a few more people in the district somewhere. It's really hard to get people to come. It's really hard to get the information to people. It just is. Steve, you've said this over and over again. God bless you. I was like, how? Why? Wouldn't people want to know? Well, maybe apparently not. So inviting people to the coffee talks, getting involved just to talk to your neighbors, talk to people, help us, help the community, help you make sure that these people are aware. Because I think a lot of times people just really aren't. And these are the ways that we get the community behind this. It's critical to pass this. It's just critical.
Yeah, and we also have a group organized to go door to door and to chat with people. We'll give you a script and information for that too. You'll have something to hand to them. And so we're gonna get out into the, what's that?
Partner. You're not going alone.
Oh, you will not
If
go
you go door to
alone.
door, you will not go alone.
We won't send you anywhere alone. But I've even done it with my family before. My husband and I have each taken a kiddo and gone, to doors just to get out and reach people. We'll have the yard signs again, just so that people know that we're on the ballot. We're working, the reason we're fundraising is so that we can afford to buy literature, marketing, types of materials, whether it's postcards or a letter. And so, obviously postage is not cheap. So we're gonna mail out as much of that as we can. And then also we're in contact with the mayors. It was really effective when we did pass the bond issue, when the mayors sign a letter and get that out to their residents so that they know what the need is, how important it is, and that they support it. We're reaching out to people that way. So we've got a lot of different ways, and if there's any of those that sound like something you would like to help with, supportweschools.org has a place where you can sign up to be a volunteer.
Great, thank you. Another question?
It's a question and a statement. It's more of a statement. Nextdoor.com is
Ugh.
I know.
The bitter barn,
It's not
yeah, we
good.
know all about
It's
it.
not good, but it is blanketed by a group called the Citizens Action Lobby, which is essentially an anti-public school lobby. And every day they're posting negative levy stuff. Not just here, Cleveland Heights, every district in the area is getting crushed by this. You guys need to get out there and put some stuff on there.
Yes, so his comment was there's a social media website, I suppose, Nextdoor, it's called Nextdoor. And it's very negative towards the public schools, and you'll see a lot of that on Facebook as well. We do have a group, a social media group, that has formed, Support We Schools is the Facebook group. You can search for it and join that group for positive information and for facts. You can go to supportweschools.org and go to the You Asked, We Answered tab and get the facts so that if somebody is saying things that you know are not true, there's sources, we can give, there's answers that are there typed up for you, you can copy and paste, and a lot of those answers have sources as well that you can cite. There's gonna be about 40% of the population that's gonna be a set no. It's not our goal to try to change their minds, or argue with them. You're gonna waste a lot of energy and probably get very upset getting into those arguments. You can post facts, comment with facts, and move on. And there's about 40% of the population that's gonna be a yes, and there's about 20% in the middle, and our goal is to inform that 20% that's in the middle and help them understand how important this is and get them to vote.
Right, but my point is, take this presentation and post it every day in every one of those groups for the local area, so that people can read it. Because right now, all they're seeing is, vote no on the levy, here's a bunch of untrue stuff. You need to get the true stuff out every day.
I did that a lot in November. I did that a lot in November after the levy failed and all the, my negative, and I would just post that website. That's all I did.
That's all I'm saying. Just
So
get it out there.
on Nextdoor, what was spoken yesterday is a lot of times the administrator of those sites are no voters, and so they may kick you off, is what their experience has been. So they try, and then they get booted, and then there's not much we can do because we can't get on the sites. Go ahead, please.
You also have to be a member of these groups, that's the problem too. I'm in the Willoughby Hills, and but I'm not in Quick Clip and some of these other ones, so you can only do so much. So we try to keep it, there's also a Facebook group.
But that doesn't mean all of us
Yeah.
can't go on those sites if you're in those communities. And at least once, just post something, just once. They kick you off, fine. but just once is better than nothing.
Make a new Gmail account.
Yeah.
Sign up again.
You're an IT guy, make 1,000 Gmail accounts.
The Willoughby Eastlake levy burner accounts. That's, good God.
Yeah, right.
Please, I'll get you, go ahead.
Well, you had said that we're on the ballot 17 out of the next 20 elections, I think.
Now it's going to be 18 if this one passes.
Right. And it's between 30 and 90,000 a shot each time, which, if I did the math right, is about $500,000 to $1.5 million that it would cost us over that 17. I know we're trying to, sell these things and develop some funds. Are we allowed to have a war chest that would cover all of that big? And is there a long-range plan to earn that much money? In the event that we have to do these 17 elections, 18 elections.
I'll turn it over to Bill in just a second. We are on the ballot, for example, in 2022, 2023, and 2024 for levy renewals. That's 17 times out of the next 20 years, as Stacy indicated, is before we calculate in this emergency operating levy, which would be the 6th emergency operating levy. And of course, that's predicated on the hope that those are passed the first time they are on the ballot. So if they're not, there's additional times on the ballot. And it is roughly $30,000 to $90,000 to be on that ballot in odd numbered years. So in even numbered years, for whatever reason, that cost is picked up by the Board of Elections, but in odd years, the district picks it up. But that pales in comparison to what we're losing. And I'm going to turn it over to our treasurer, Bill Parkinson. But before I do that, I just want to give him some kudos that he wouldn't give himself. So he's recently worked on a deal to refinance and do some things with our bonds to save taxpayers money. It came to a total, the deal that he had worked out came to a savings of just over $3 million. But because of the failed November levy, and he and I personally have gone to Moody's in Chicago and presented multiple times to try and keep our credit rating as high as possible, it doesn't matter what we say, at the end of every presentation, they point to our emergency operating levies and indicate that that is an unstable funding source. Because at any point they could be withdrawn, and as a result of that, they lower our credit rating. But why don't you talk a little bit about the deal that we had, and then we'll move on.
Sure. So with respect to the cost levies, just so that everybody knows, the site that I cite for information, it's Ohio Revised Code section 350101. That explains the amount of money districts have to pay for the cost of elections, which is in odd numbered years. In even numbered years, there is a cost. It's a nominal cost, but it's to the cost of advertising and the cost of printing. So it's very nominal. The huge cost that we incur in odd number of years is paying for the whole election. Now that gets divided depending on who else is on the ballot, but that is a cost to the school district, and that's the only cost that we can pay for with respect to levies. Everything else has to be fundraised and privately donated. I cannot send an email. I cannot grab a piece of paper. I cannot make a copy. It is illegal for me to do it, or any employee to do it. So that's why the levy committee is here, and they're charged with the fundraising and getting out the information to the community. Now, with respect to what Steve had indicated, I was working on a refunding of debt. And I was working on refunding part of the school bonds that paid for South, North, and Longfellow. And I was working on refunding a portion of unvoted debt. I was hoping to save about $1 million in interest cost, but that is going to be put off to the side because, as Steve indicated, Moody's, credit agencies like S&P, it doesn't matter where you go, Fitch, they view renewal levies as a risk. And when you introduce risk into finances, you increase your interest rates. When you increase interest rates, obviously it costs more. So as Steve indicated, the taxpayers of this community are paying $6 million more for South, for North, and for Longfellow because we have renewal levies. We primarily rely on renewal levies. So the cost to build the buildings is more. We are going to forego, potentially, highly likely, forego refunding that debt because our credit rating, I was called by Moody's. They indicated to me that they're going to do what's called a surveillance. A surveillance is basically a credit review. How are things going? What does your 5-year forecast look like? Do you have any levies on the ballot? Have you failed any levies? Do you have any renewals on the ballot? Did they pass or did they fail? Those are the types of questions that I will get from Moody's. What's probably going to happen is our credit rating will be lowered. I'm going to hope that we maintain our credit rating with a negative outlook, but I think it's going to be lowered. And if our credit rating is lowered, we do not have the ability to refinance our debt to save money. It's not completely 100% dead, but it's heading in that direction very fast. If there's a slight chance that I can still do this, believe me, I will. I'm going to try every which way possible to save money that I can, but it's unlikely that I'm going to be able to do this because of renewal levies and because of our credit rating.
Question to that?
Sorry. So I have a question about why rather, Megan, you had said this earlier, that one of the 3 problems was that we are a renewal dependent district. My question to you would be, why? If my income stream isn't good, I stop seeking money in that way. We get paid $6 an hour or $10 an hour for all of 10. So for the last 17 years, we've been doing the same defunct style of attempting to fund our district. It will continue to be an issue. Why are we continuing to do that? What is the district doing to better level out its income stream to not rely so heavily upon uneducated, underinformed, and non-participatory voters? I don't understand that.
Good question.
I would like to make a video with you if you're willing to do that afterwards. The reality is, why do we keep doing emergency operating levies? Because we failed to, our other options is called a continuous operating levy, which we attempted to do in August and November, and they both failed. We've also in the past tried to do what's called a substitute levy, which is a no tax increase levy that would replace those emergency operating levies, so we're not continuously on the ballot. I think it's mostly a lack of understanding in the community is primarily what's driving it. I think there's more people that understand it now than ever have before. So the school board had a decision to make, and a difficult one. Do we go in March with an emergency operating levy, or do we go with a continuous operating levy, even though the continuing operating levy had failed twice previously? And the decision was difficult, and I'll certainly turn it over to Dr. Beal to give the board's perspective, but at least from the administration's perspective, a lot of discussions at our level, what are we going to recommend to the board? And ultimately, we made the decision to recommend an emergency operating levy because when your house is on fire, you got to put the fire out and worry about repairs after the fire's out. And our house is on fire. If we fail our levy in March, it's absolutely catastrophic. We can't absorb another levy failure. And a lot of the pushback related to November was based on the fact that it is not time-bound. That there's this false sense of understanding in the community that somehow being forced to come back and renew it every 5 or every 10 years, depending on your time frame, gives the community some control or accountability, where it's not actually true. All it's really doing is costing the community millions of dollars. But I don't think they do that because they're trying to lose millions of dollars. I think they do that based on the fact that they've been conditioned to do emergency time-bound levies, and it's been difficult. As Mike talked about, the greatest challenge of being a school superintendent, it's one thing by far more challenging than social media, than this levy itself, all of them. None of them are as difficult as how do you effectively communicate. It's tough. It's very difficult. So we ultimately made the decision to recommend a time-bound emergency operating levy, which this is an $8.5 million emergency operating levy for 10 years. I'll turn it over to Dr. Bill to give the board's perspective.
Well, I think that if you can actually even look at on YouTube for the meeting where we had that vote, and every member of the board stated that we know that this is not the most fiscally responsible and the best way to fund school districts. Experience has shown us that it's not, but like Mr. Thompson said, our house is on fire. We need to do something to get this passed now. And then we need to really try to develop a good education plan so that the community understands what we're losing by doing that.
I just have a follow-up question. I have actually a child in every school. I mean, we help raise high schoolers. I have a middle schooler. I have an elementary student and a pre-K student. And one of the things that my kids always ask me is, they have ideas. Have we thought to embrace our children? And we do project-based learning in all of our schools. My son goes to Soy. So why hasn't this been a PBL? Why don't we take the thousands of kids in our district and get them engaged, get them inspired? Because I'll tell you what, when my kids come to me with ideas, and they're, like you said, mine are very much so in the schools, and they need these schools. But wow, if my children could be a voice for this and understand it and to build it up, couldn't that also be a resource? Because I don't see that happening. My 15-year-old has no idea what's going on. All she knows is she lost her sport.
So, did everyone hear the question? It's basically, can we get how do we get the kids more involved? So we actually have one of the groups that the levy committee formed is a student group. So we have a group that is working with any students who want to volunteer, to create videos, events. We've done in the past like rallies where we do a walk, say from South High School through downtown Willoughby. We do another one at Shoregate. A lot of the kids will come out for that. We had a high school sophomore in November. He was a sophomore who actually reached out. He sent several emails to Catherine Beal, and then he wanted to organize students. He wanted to help. He and his dad were asking, what can I do? What can I? And so we had a group meeting just for students to come out. There were a lot of middle school and high school students who came, and they made their own videos and posted them and shared them. So we had that happening in November, and we have a group to oversee that happening for this levy. So what I would do is go to supportweschools.org and go to the place, I want to help or I want to be a volunteer, and make sure you check the box for student group, and we'll make sure that the leader of that group has your information. As far as doing it in the classrooms or as a PBL, Mr. Thompson can probably answer this, but learning about voting and about elections and about levies, I think that might be something that's allowed in the schools, but having the kids work on something for a campaign for getting people to vote yes for the levy can't be done in school time. It has to be done outside of school time without school resources. But we would love to have kids. I have 3 really active kids as well. They have great ideas. I ordered them their shirts. They work the concession stand with me. There are things that your kids can help do. And we want to hear their ideas.
I think there was a lot of conversation about PBLs. PBLs is a problem-based learning. It's a style that we use that we think is pretty effective. And one of those is introducing real-world problems, which I think kids are drawn to that. It's more meaningful to them. So there was some discussions about it. But anytime anything political comes up, it creates consternation among some of our parents, and we get a lot of pushback for it. So that's why we ultimately decided not to do that